We have some more RFA signings to discuss today, plus we have an update on the Brady Tkachuk situation with the Ottawa Senators, and we're looking at some NHL trade rumors and some of the top goaltenders most likely to move once the season gets underway. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my normal recording studio here. I am on the road at a hotel here today, so we're certainly going to have a little bit of a different setup, but we'll do the best we can here with what we have. So today we do have some updates for you. We have some signings to discuss, as well as some RFA deals and more. So let's dive right in and get started. Now, first up, we have the New York Islanders signing Zdeno Chara. So he's officially gone full circle. Of course, he was drafted and started his NHL career way back a long time ago with the New York Islanders. Of course, if you take a look at some of his youngest teammates like Barzal, Beauvillier, he was starting to play in the NHL before they were even born. That's how long he's been around and been playing. So he signs a one-year deal. Don't have the exact value money-wise. Probably around $1 million or less. There likely could be some bonuses built in there as well. So certainly not a huge shocker. We knew that Chara was kind of sniffing around with a few teams. The Islanders were looking for somebody who could replace the minutes of Nick Leddy. Not sure that Chara is going to give you exactly that, but we saw him play a lot of minutes in Washington last year. So even though he is into his mid-40s now, he's still in a situation where he can contribute, I'd say probably a little bit more than a lot of the other UFA defensemen out there. I mean, there still could be upgrades. It wouldn't be shocking if the Isles do continue to pursue a trade to upgrade their blue line throughout the season or before the deadline for sure. But I think Chara could be a good fit there. You know you're getting good leadership. You know you're getting somebody who's going to play hard and give you his all. Should work well with the whole Lou Lamoriello, Barry Trotz system and style of play. So we'll see how that works out. Obviously, like I said, it's kind of interesting where he went full circle here. Started with the Islanders, went to the Senators, of course, played a long time with the Bruins, was a captain, won a cup there. He's probably most going to be known for his time with Boston. But then, of course, spent 1 year with the Capitals, and now he goes on to the Islanders. So an interesting team for him to land with. So, of course, I was wondering on what your thoughts are on the Chara signing, so let me know down below. We also got some RFA deals like Kailer, Yamamoto, and Edmonton finally come to a solution. They get a 1 year deal, and they've probably done that just to get him signed to make sure he doesn't miss any time in training camp. It's just at $1.1 million. So this is a situation where they've been negotiating off and on, trying to come to something. I don't really think Yamamoto has enough leverage for a longer term deal, and then I honestly think between their cap space and what he's been able to do, I think they just said, you know what, let's just do a 1 year deal. We'll kick it down the road here a little bit. They can start negotiating again in January. If he plays strong and consistently in the top six, then I think by early in the new year, before the end of next year, they'll be more comfortable extending him longer term. So Yamamoto, another RFA here, officially signed and taken care of. And of course, the Ottawa Senators also announced today they finally come to terms with Logan Brown, the 2016 first round pick, who's been basically holding out and hasn't signed his qualifying offer, which many found quite surprising. There's been a lot of rumors about him wanting out of Ottawa, not quite pleased with his development. Obviously, he's been plagued by injuries, which is really the bulk of the issue here. I don't really think Logan Brown has much of a leg to stand on when it comes to requesting a trade. I do feel, based on what we've heard, that the Senators did explore it, but there wasn't really much out there. He did have some options to go to Europe, but of course still has aspirations to want to be an NHL player. Now, here's the other thing too, I never really quite understood about this. If he really wants to get traded or to be moved, doesn't matter how he gets there, I guess, you would think that this would be the time that he just would have accepted his qualifying offer, ask for a trade, and if it didn't happen, just go to camp and do your best, because at the end of the day here, he is no longer waivers exempt. So if he goes to camp and the Senators don't really want to have him at the NHL level, to send him down to Belleville, they have to put him through waivers. So another team can claim him, he can get his fresh start, and off he goes. But obviously, if he goes to camp and looks good, they're going to want to keep him. And to be honest, consider how high of a pick he was, I think that if he has a good training camp, that they should feel obligated to give him NHL games to see what he can prove and maybe mend this relationship and get him to be a bigger part of the team's future. I mean, at this point, he's a 6'6" center iceman that moves around the ice well for a big man his size. So I don't really think that they should give up on this just yet. And if he's going to insist on it, then if he plays well enough, they'll get better value and get a better return. So either way, to me, it's in his best interest to show up at camp, which he's now going to do. Now, of course, he's been plagued mostly by back injuries the past few years, and reports indicate that those back injuries have been dealt with. They are a thing of the past. He's in great shape. Has been training in Arizona all summer and appears to be, physically at least very much ready to go. So we'll see how that climbs to the ice here once he gets to training camp and how things look. But at the end of the day, like I said, if he doesn't really pan out to make the NHL roster, they want to send him to the minors, he could get claimed and get his fresh start anyway. So I never really understood why it was such a big thing here for him not to be signing that qualifying offer. But that's done now. He'll be at camp, and we will see where things go. Now, quick update on Brady Tkachuk. Of course, Elliotte Friedman, Jeff Marek have been doing the NHL media availabilities here that we've seen between Toronto and Chicago, and they've been doing a lot of interviews for their podcasts. And one of the players they've talked to, which has been making some rounds here, is Matthew Tkachuk. And Matthew kind of said some things that kind of probably didn't sit well with Sens fans in a sense, indicating that there's been a lot of fake news out there and that the Sens and Brady are not close. He said that basically Brady's not as cutthroat as he and his dad, and that they're trying to basically work with him to make sure he gets his full value, and that he's kind of pulling a typical Tkachuk, he called it. He's like, Dad held out and missed part of training camp. I held out, missed part of training camp, and he's probably going to do the same thing to make sure he gets what he deserves. So will we be shocked if Brady Tkachuk is not there on day one of training camp? I personally won't be. See, there's pros and cons of dealing with the Tkachuks, because you get this side of it that's really difficult. You're never going to get a team-friendly deal with those guys based on how they operate, but they're also a heck of a hockey player and a huge part of the team. Now, he also said some good things, like that basically Brady should be the captain, that he feels like a lot of people feel that way, that he said Brady loves it in Ottawa, really likes his teammates and all that. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of positives, but reports between Bruce Garriock, Sean Simpson, Gord Miller, even Elliotte Friedman himself indicated that, contract negotiations were cordial, things were going well, and they felt like things were at least somewhat close, whereas now he's basically saying they're not. But of course, it depends on your definition of close, really. Like, to me, things can change a lot with one phone call, as they keep saying, and that very well could be the case. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here as well, Matthew Tkachuk, when he was saying all this, he had a grin on his face. He didn't exactly, to me, he looked like he just stirring the pot. He's just trying to cause some shit here, and we'll see what happens. So I think we got to take it with a grain of salt. I don't think Sens fans should be too stressed over this, and we'll see. But at the end of the day, whether Brady Tkachuk is there on day one of camp or not, the end of the ultimate goal here is that he gets signed, and hopefully it's a longer-term deal to give that team and franchise some stability, and we'll see where things go. Now, yesterday, we referenced an article in The Athletic talking about Jack Eichel and the fact that a trade might have to wait. That article also went on to talk about some other trades that are more likely to happen this season, and they went on to talk a bit about NHL goaltenders. So I want to take a quick look at that. The NHL goalies that are most likely to get dealt here between now and early part of the season, or maybe a little bit later into the year. The first place you have to start is the Dallas Stars, of course. Obviously, the one guy that's going nowhere is Jake Ottinger. Ben Bishop really isn't going anywhere either. A lot of that's largely due to the fact that his health isn't fantastic, and he might not even play this year. But between Braden Holtby, who was basically signed as an insurance piece, and Anton Hudobin, there's a pretty good chance once they get through training camp into the season and see where things are going with them and how Ottinger's playing and how Bishop's health is, there's a good chance that one of those other two guys very well could be dealt. And it makes a lot of sense that they could get another asset in return to improve another area of their team. But like I said, there's a lot of X factors there. No guarantee that any of them get moved. But I think any team that's going to be looking for a goaltender, and if there's injuries or anything that happens where a team is just not getting what they need, Dallas is probably going to be the first place they look to try to land themselves a goaltender. Another one to look to is Detroit. Of course, they got Alex Nedeljkovic out of Carolina. He's likely going to be the main guy there. And they also have Thomas Greiss, who's also a little bit older, but also a very capable goaltender too. Like any team would be happy to have Greiss as a backup, or even in a 1A, 1B in some situations too. So if you look around the teams that need goalies, Greiss could be an option because he doesn't have a huge ticket. He doesn't have a lot of term, but he does have a lot of experience and has proven at times to be an extremely capable goaltender. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that he very well could be another goaltender that finds himself with a new home before the end of next year's too. I know one goalie that the team is hoping they find a new home for is Mikko Koskinen and the Edmonton Oilers. That's a player they were really hoping to move and run with Mike Smith and a different goaltender, but it just never came to be. They bought out James Neal instead of Koskinen, so they didn't really want to do another buyout on top of that. Plus, they just could not find a trade because it sounded like all the offers that they would really be talking about is they had to add too much of an incentive to give teams a reason to want to take on that contract. Now, fortunately, Koskinen's contract only has the current year left on it. So after this year, they're in the clear, but still they have to get through the current season here, and they would probably love to find a trade. So it wouldn't be shocking if they do give him a bit more games early on. I know they're probably going to want to be careful with Mike Smith's workload, because if he gets, he's an older guy, if he gets too tired out early on, it's going to hurt how he plays likely later in the year. So they might do a little bit more of a showcasing situation with Koskinen and try to find a move as the season goes on, perhaps. And of course, another goaltender who's still relatively young, comes with a decent contract. To me, makes a lot of sense as well. And there have been talks about this guy really for the better part of the last year, is Joonas Korpisalo in Columbus. Many feel that Elvis Merzlikins has the higher ceiling, the more likelihood to run the starting job in Columbus longer term. So that makes Korpisalo an available trade asset. Now, obviously, Korpisalo is capable as a starter. Could be, to me, he makes a really good option for a 1A, 1B without having to play quite so much. And we know that Columbus is a team that's certainly going through some changes. I don't expect the Jackets to be super competitive this year. Like, they'll be okay, but I don't think they're going to have a ton of success. I think they're going to, possibly see some more turnover as the year goes on. Be interesting to see what happens with Laine as well. He's certainly a key player that needs to bounce back. That trade right now between Columbus and Winnipeg, it didn't really look good for either side last year. Dubois struggled, Laine struggled, but you got to remember too, during the pandemic with all the rules and the quarantining and all those things, that certainly impacted things too. So we're curious to see with both getting a full regular off season, and even though it's not a completely normal season, but at least it's much closer to it, see how they respond here and how they kind of get going for the current year. But Korpisalo is a big name that could find himself on the go. He's been linked to Edmonton too, so I would not be shocked if the Oilers revisit that. If they can get Korpisalo out of Columbus, not only could he be a great partner for Mike Smith, but he could be a great option for the more immediate future too, as Smith is certainly, like I said, getting up there in years, and it's hard to say how much longer he can keep going, not only play, but play at a high enough level to be considered a starting goalie or a 1A, 1B type of guy as well. So let me know what your thoughts are on those goaltenders. Which ones do you see being the most likely to be traded? Which ones do you think, let me know what your mock trades are, where you see them going here, because I do think you're more likely to see goalie trades early in the year, as teams might hit an early panic button or run into injuries more so than later. You don't usually see a lot of goalies traded at the deadline, and when you do, it's usually guys for an insurance piece, like for a number 3 spot in the depth chart or something like that, and oftentimes they don't even get a chance to play a whole heck of a lot, or at most as a backup. So be curious to see what happens here. Let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We will keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. We will be back to our normal recording studio tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.